Welcome back to Citizen Development Live. I am your host, Neil Miller. Today, our guest is Liz Stultz. She is a manager of firm administration operations at Malden and Jenkins. Hey, Liz, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Neil?
Excellent. It's fun to get to know you and to learn about your story. We're going to dive into that. What I'd like for you to do is just kind of explain how you ended up in the role you are. It's not a traditional developer role. We'll talk about that in this second. So just from a basic business perspective, how did you get to be where you are?
Okay. So, quick history. I originally was trained to be an elementary school teacher, which I
Nice.
did for several years in California. Then ended up having my own children and stepped back from that. And then a few years after leaving that profession, we moved to the Atlanta area and basically was just at home with my kids,
Hmm.
guiding them through schooling, etc. And somewhere late middle school years for both of my kids, I thought I probably should get a job and started looking for a job within the school district at that time. I thought, oh, I was,
Right.
volunteering as a librarian at that time. And I'm comfortable here. This is what I'm used to. I
Yeah.
certainly could be fine with a job at a school district. And that did not pan out for some of my first searches. And then a
Uh-huh.
friend of mine who is a parent works here at Malden and Jenkins. And she said, oh, if you're looking for work, we're hiring. So ended up starting as an administrative sort of temporary fill in during tax season. And at the
Hmm.
end of that first tax season, they said, could you stay, please? So it rolled into more of a part time position. I'd be able to come in normal time in the morning and get home when my kids were off the bus, which
Yeah.
was helpful. So did that for quite a few years, eight, seven, eight overall. And then we had a new firm administrator um, added to the staff at Malden and Jenkins, and we had connected on several occasions. She's from a different office, was an office
Hmm.
manager in a different office, and I said, well, if you ever need help in your new role. And sure enough, within a few months,
Yeah.
I was tagged to go ahead and help her. She's the director of firm administration, and I worked with supporting her and have grown in the role since that was about a year ago, a little over a year ago now, actually, and have
Yeah.
moved more into a management because I have specific areas of firm administration that I manage
Yeah.
to help her.
Well, it's great. I'm mostly curious about your history as an elementary school teacher and how that factors in, because I feel like there are lessons you learn from those days that just stick with you forever.
Yeah.
But obviously, you came in as somebody who was competent. You could figure out things. You could set up some kind of systems. Any other kind of like skills you felt like made you seem like a person people kept wanting to bring into their new structures they had?
I don't know. Mostly just initiative, I think. Just
Mm-hmm.
the willingness to sit down and sort of figure it out. And
Mm.
as an elementary school teacher, I was one of the leaders in our small district to help pioneer tech usage in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom. When I was teaching, it was late 90s,
Yep.
early 2000s, and technology wasn't really used to the extent that it is now. Um, we were working, and I was part of some pilot work through the county and then our small school district to really roll out the usage of technology with the students from little
Mm-hmm.
things like playing games and using their time in the computer lab to do some actual learning versus just playing like wagon the the wagon
Right.
game, and I can't even think of
Yeah.
the name of it now, but I know my kids sat on the computer doing that for a long time. So
Oregon Trail, right?
yes, thank you, Oregon Trail. Uh, so
Shout out to all the millennials out there for
I
that.
know, right? All of those kids in my classroom, they loved Oregon Trail. But so that background and friendliness with tech obviously was
Yeah.
helpful and not being scared for
Yeah.
the most
Not
part.
not scared of technology. So
Right.
let's bring that into what happened. You stepped into this new role. Malden Jenkins is actually using a platform to be able to automate some processes that go on, or really just
Correct.
one or two main processes, right? So walk us into what happened there, what you discovered when you walked into this new role.
So the usage of these processes had already been set up
Mm-hmm.
before I came into this role, and basically it was to approve a piece of paper that would get walked around the office for
Yeah.
signatures. And I have memories of the first part of my job. being I would go down and I would take a paper from the managing partner's office and I would walk it down the hall to central office to do what they needed to do. So,
Right. Aren't you so important, right?
right, I was.
Yeah.
And KissFlow helped sort of mitigate some of that. This process form of being able to send documents through an approval process to be signed off on um, digitally versus physically having someone walk a
Yep.
paper around.
Hmm.
And this was initiated initially by the office manager in here in Atlanta, who got that started for us. And so when the director of firm administration changed, I had had a little experience helping that process develop with testing and a little bit of understanding of how it worked. But it wasn't until I really started this role in late last fall that I started getting into the nuts and bolts of it. Some big changes had been made.
Hmm.
The process expanded, and then, we also use the process not only for new client onboarding, but for some accounting processes that need approval flows. So I just help um, be the interface between when something isn't working correctly and we need help, or if we need to make new processes. And I know our
Yeah.
IT department uses it as well
Yeah.
and it's really mostly for approvals.
Yeah. So when you stepped in, you were introduced to the system. You opened it up. Like, how would you describe your intimidation level? Looking at kind of like the behind the scenes look at what was going on. Was it very much like, oh, I get this, it's very easy, or like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I don't understand anything.
It was a cross. I mean, there were some nuances, obviously. I spent a little time watching videos and I took an
Mm-hmm.
academy class so I could just understand the nuts and bolts and spent some time, clicking around what was set up so that I could
Mm-hmm.
get an understanding of how it works. Um, I know that it's used for much more complicated items and processes that we currently use it for. I know it has quite a range of ability um, as far as what it can be used for. When I've heard, demonstrations from other clients that
Yeah.
have used the product, um, what we use it for seems to work fairly well, and everyone, I think, at this point takes it for granted. We can't imagine doing it
Sure.
differently. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that one of your big duties is like you're the fixer. Like if somebody has a problem with something, they come to you. So tell us what that's like for you.
Stressful sometimes.
Yeah.
Stressful sometimes because sometimes I just don't know what's happened or why something's changed.
Uh huh.
I've learned a lot about making sure I keep up with when roles change.
Uh huh.
Of users in the firm, that's a major item. I mean, I can think of an example recently where something was broken, and it really boiled down to the fact that one of our offices had a partner in charge change quite a
Hmm.
bit ago, but it wasn't caught up on, and it broke some flows
Hmm.
because things weren't populating correctly. So I try to stay in front of that now a lot more
Yeah.
than I realized needed to happen. Usually, we'll get a support ticket in to our firm administrations. We will look into what's going on, which is mostly my manager saying, Liz, help. And if I can figure it out, what's missing or what's not happening correctly, and can fix it, I will. Oftentimes, I have to incorporate support on the KissFlow side. Which has always been very helpful. Everybody has been always generous with their time and knowledge and getting things fixing so it flows again for me.
Nice. Well, great. It's fun to see like your role as we'll call like application maintenance. So you've built this
Yes.
application. There's something needs to be done. Some role changes, or hey, we want to add one more extra step. Like those are
Hmm.
typically things that an IT team or somebody who's developed that application, it's very intensive to be able to go back and make those changes. So the fact that you can jump in there and figure it out, maybe with a little bit of help, or
Yes.
without sometimes too, is really really exciting to see.
Yeah, and we've had, some operational changes. So some things that we do have changed. So I've had to change the process to
Yeah.
incorporate either a new step or an integration that we need to see to have that new flow work without hopefully damaging the architecture of what's already there.
Yeah.
But
Well, good. Well, tell us a little bit about your relationship with the IT team. You talked about them maybe using it as well, but
Mhm.
how much oversight do they have over to this? Do they like check in with you a lot, or have a lot of safeguards around how you're using this?
No, it is on me and
Yeah.
Kathy. Yeah, no, I mean, they use the processes for what they need, and of course they're there and supportive, and if they
Right.
can be helpful, they will. But it's definitely in our charge to maintain this software. And it's funny, I was thinking there's quite a bit of software now. You know, the joke is always not no more new software. Let's pare down what we have.
Yeah.
From an operation cost standpoint. But we're in an environment where there's so much software usage and so many different softwares. IT isn't necessarily responsible for all of them anymore. Like this is a good example of that. This is purely like an operational thing, internal house operations usage, and it's on firm administration to take care of it and handle it and deal with it. And IT is rarely, they're happy, I think, that we have it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And it's an interesting blurred line, firm administration at large. It's a little bit of a blur between IT and
Hmm.
other operational things that we need to take care of. IT jokes with me that I'm their honorary IT team member.
Yeah.
They'll, I have the administration, so I have the 8 years of administrative use of those softwares, and just the daily things that need to get taken care of for our clients, to get those deliverables out the door to our clients. So I have the usage of the software, whereas IT has more of the setup and how it's deployed and how it needs to be configured to run properly across our networks and servers,
Hmm.
but they don't necessarily have the usage side. So I'll find myself being tagged in quite a few tickets, support tickets. Liz, how does this work? What do you think of
Hmm.
this? Is this reasonable? Should we do this? Um, and setup items too, they will use my assistance with, just because it'll be quicker for me to go in and change the user or do something with the user,
Right.
depending on what software platform it is. So,
Yeah.
fortunately, it's a very good relationship with IT. They're fun to work with.
That's great. Uh, and we call this Citizen Development Live. We haven't really introduced
Hmm.
that term yet. And whenever we were actually talking beforehand, that was a new term for you too.
Yes.
So this is a little bit at the heart of what we mean by citizen developer. Somebody who's not in the IT team, who's
Hmm.
capable of either building or maintaining applications for oftentimes that middle office use. So it's
Right.
not on the front facing. You're not dealing necessarily with customers or clients out there. You're not dealing with your back end CRM, ERP systems. It's just like for the
Right.
daily operations that need to happen.
Hmm.
People like you who are able to do that. So I know you've had some time to get used to that term, research a little bit. Like, how does that term hit you now of citizen developer? Do you feel like it's accurate, or what are your thoughts about it?
It's definitely, I see how I can apply it now to part of my
Hmm.
job. And I was a citizen developer before I even knew what that meant.
Right.
And I can think of a couple of examples. I guess I think of it too more of a like trying to use software outside of the box application too,
Hmm.
where like our workflow software that we use. I was at their conference and they mentioned, hey, you could use this for internal operations for like a new hire or um, a new client onboarding, and it didn't dawn on me at the time, like, no, wait, we just use that for the tax and to track the due dates. And when they opened that up, it sort of opened up Pandora's box, like, I can
Yeah.
okay, I can use the tools they have in there and program it and go ahead and do a new hire flow and go ahead and do a client onboarding. And just for the administrative internal operations that we do, we have a notifier app attached to it that I found that can then create a ticket via email to our support desk. And even just support desks in general, IT, obviously has a long history, IT departments, of using ticket systems. And our administrative department, at least here in Atlanta, had gotten so large with so many requests coming in over and
Hmm.
over that I thought, can we please have an admin ticket system? And we adopted it in Atlanta. And then the firm at large now, all the admins across different offices have a ticket system. So citizen development has sort of always been part of kind of what I've done.
Yeah.
And it's nice to actually have a name to it
Yeah.
now. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not IT, but I can look at the tools we have, and if it's simple enough to figure out and think about how it could be used, then I'll try it. Let's
Yeah.
try it. So,
I feel like that's such a great theme, just looking at the arc of your career too. Like, just not being afraid, saying, okay, there's some new technology. You can either immediately or quickly thereafter figure out, oh, we could probably use that, or you could probably apply that. And if the platform is simple enough, that it's
mhm.
not going to scare you away once you get into it, then it's a great tool. Have you ever had
Yes.
that experience where you've thought you wanted to do something, then got into it and be like, well, this is not for me. This is like above my pay grade.
Well, sometimes when
Yeah.
I'm working with something within KISSFlow,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little above my pay grade. But there's enough resources to help me use that. I don't know that I've been doing this long enough to really get into a mucky situation.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. No,
Yeah.
we're in the middle of a couple of different integration turn-ons that are available as tools within our tax software, and that isn't going as well as planned. I think in in the overall, like looking at it overall, it's more not getting in and realizing, oh, this can't be done. It's
Hmm.
more having the time to sit and be like, okay, well, it's not all going to be done now, but
Hmm.
maybe this step that I take will lead us further to another step.
Yeah.
At least that's how I'm looking at it to make myself feel better sometimes.
Yeah. Sure.
It might not be everything we wanted right away or that was sold to us, but if we can make steps in that direction.
Yeah. Do you have anyone else outside of the firm administration that's come to you and asked for help in terms of building new processes or how they want to use things?
No, at this point we've just gotten like, hey, can you make this? Can
Yeah.
you have this made? But nothing extensive at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I love the theme, the discussion around what citizen development means, how it's used, how you've been able to see it as a part of your work, and just to be able to see the empowerment that you have, to be able to come in, no development experience, but be able to really manage and be the manager for this particular
Hmm.
system and
Hmm.
go through. Does that feel like, just in terms of your career, like, do you feel more empowered? Do you feel like, hey, I can actually bring more value to my organization now that I've mastered some of these systems a little bit?
Yes, I feel a little bit like that, especially when my boss, my director says, Liz, I really need you,"
Yeah.
because she can put it out of her mind and not
Right.
have to learn a whole new system. She could if she needed to, figure out something that's happened, but it's much nicer for her to say, "Hey, can you look at this? Can you can you get in there and figure out what's going on?"
Yeah.
So it is a little bit of job security, yes.
That's good. That's
It's
good.
it's nice to feel like I've got something that I'm in charge of and part of.
Yeah. Well, Liz, as we close up, anything you'd like to close out with or to share with other people who are in a similar situation, or those who are wanting to give more empowerment to people like you? Just some final words from you.
I guess just always be willing to click buttons. I joke with another friend of mine, coworker here, that if you take some initiative and explore around and do some reading and do some clicking and don't be afraid to test, that's a
Yeah.
big thing. I do a lot of testing now where before I wouldn't really realize how to or what to, but I make test clients all the time for different softwares or test usage of something, and I'll name it test or whatever so I can find it easily. But that is a key to see how things work, to see how
Yeah.
things are linking, to see how things are playing out. So really just a willingness to go explore and to read and to learn what the possibilities are and then to test it out. Those are
Yeah.
the sort of key things that I try to do.
I love that. I feel like that curiosity element is so essential to most people being a great citizen developer. It's just, I wonder what this button does. Like, I wonder what
Hmm.
happens when these things happen, and to do it in a safe environment where you're not going to break the whole company. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yes. That is sometimes a big worry though.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to do anything here.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. Well, Liz, thanks so much for being on the show. We've learned a lot from you. Thank you for sharing your story and for what you're doing, and
Well,
congratulations
thank you.
on what you've been able to accomplish.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure.